President Trump unleashing, again, a new series of attacks on Democratic Congressman Elijah Cummings and his West Baltimore district. The president trashing the congressman on Twitter, claiming his district has the worst crime statistics in the nation, but providing zero sources to back up this claim. That is in addition to the president's attacks that took place this weekend when he tweeted, "The city of Baltimore is a, quote, disgusting rat and rodent-infested mess. If Congressman Cummings spent more time in Baltimore, maybe he could help clean up this very dangerous and filthy place." The president followed up by calling Congressman Cummings, who is black, a racist. The congressman responded with a series of tweets on Saturday saying this: "Mr. President, I go home to my district daily. Each morning I wake up and I go and fight for my neighbors. It is my constitutional duty to conduct oversight of the executive branch. But it is my moral duty to fight for my constituents." Just yesterday, I held a hearing on the skyrocketing prices of prescription drugs and the financial hardships that families across the nation and in Baltimore are facing. Mr. President, we can address this together. 2 years ago, I went to the White House to ask you to endorse my bill to let the government negotiate directly for lower drug prices. You told me then that you supported the legislation and that you would work with me to make it happen. I took you at your word. Joining me now, Baltimore Mayor Bernard Young. Mayor Young, President Trump clearly has sent a message to the city of Baltimore. What's your message to him?
My message to the president is stop tweeting and send federal help and federal resources to the city of Baltimore. Not just to the city of Baltimore, to urban cities around the country that are having problems with aging infrastructure, with crime and grime, and a reduction in resources from the federal government. We have an unfunded EPA mandate to fix our aging infrastructure, which causes us to raise water rates on our vulnerable poor people in the city of Baltimore. Stop tweeting and send us the help that we need.
So help me understand that. The president's attack on Baltimore this weekend was not met with any new proposals for federal solutions to your problems?
None. Not one. I have not heard from the president. Normally when a new mayor comes into office, whether it's through a mayor resigning or whatever, they will get a letter from the president congratulating them and offering to meet with them to find out what their priorities are. I haven't received anything, and he's right down the road.
Well, get specific with me, please. Have you seen the reverse? Have proposed or already enacted federal spending cuts hurt your city?
Yes, they have.
Where?
In our health department, in our SNAP program that he's talking about cutting even further. The money that we needed for our tunnel upgrades, we wanted $215 million. He sent us $115 million, $100 million short. I mean, not just Baltimore. Cities around this country, their federal funding have been cut by this president, who claimed when he got in office he wanted to make America great again. What he's doing is dividing America racially.
Well, what if he offers you a solution? What if he picks up the phone today and says, "Mayor, I've got a Marshall Plan to solve the problems that are plaguing our poorest cities"? Can you work with him?
I will welcome that. I will welcome that, because instead of us going back and forth on how bad American cities are, particularly Baltimore, tell me what you want to do to help us to fix these problems.
Take me out of politics. Take me out of political strategy in the 2020 election. Help us understand, what's the real-world impact of President Trump's repeated racist tweeting?
It has divided this country. He has alienated our allies around the world. Instead of him using his bully pulpit to belittle minorities, politics have to be in it. He just attacked 4 minority women. Now he attacked Elijah Cummings, African-American male. We should be trying to make America great again, as he said, instead of turn America down racially, dividing this country. The federal government have resources that they can give cities to help with all these problems. The crime rate goes down. Cities be vibrant again. he needs to do those kind of things.
Well, tell me what your city looks like, because on day one of this administration, the president talked about what he called American carnage, high crime, failing schools, and racial tensions. You are the mayor of a major American city. Tell us what Baltimore really looks like.
Baltimore is a vibrant city. Baltimore is home to some of the world's renowned institutions, Johns Hopkins, shock trauma. We have all of our cultural events right here in Baltimore. We're a city that have problems like any other city, but we're moving forward. And we're moving forward without really a lot of assistance from the federal government. I mean, HUD, they're cutting programs that are hurting poor people all over this country, not just in Baltimore, but in the entire country. We need for the president to send federal help to Baltimore for programs that's going to uplift people instead of turn people down. Well, and those attacks and those tweets, I've never in my entire life ever heard of any president tweeting and doing these kind of things to divide us instead of bringing us all together. Like I said earlier, our allies are even shaken by some of the things that this president is doing and has done.
You're right, Mayor. It has never been done before, so maybe this is an opportunity for people across this country to unite. Mayor, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's dig into what all of this means. Joining us now, Chris Liu, former assistant to President Obama and White House cabinet secretary, and a pair of MSNBC contributors, Jason Johnson, politics editor at TheRoot.com, and Noah Rothman, associate editor at Commentary Magazine, also the author of Unjust, Social Justice and the Unmaking of America. Noah, the divide and conquer strategy worked for the president when he ran in 2016. But in 2018, it failed. The days, the weeks leading up to the midterms, that's when the president went hard on the caravan. He called for sending the military down to the border. And what did people do? They showed up to vote. They voted against that, and they voted for solving health care and other issues like that. What's up with the president going back to this strategy?
Yeah, I don't know. It's really kind of counterproductive, you would think. There was no border crisis at the time the president was making an issue of it, and voters reacted accordingly. He has a crisis now. It has materialized in 2019, and so he's abandoned it. The common thread here, and when he goes after these people, is that they have offended him in some way. They have insulted him, or he feels assaulted. And so the cottage industry sprouts up on the right of appending some sort of a rationale onto the back end of a Trump tweet in order to justify all the effort they have to make in defending him.
So
but there
all
is no
of this
defense.
is to rationalize the president's racist tweets?
There is no
Find a specific?
There's no philosophy here. There's no political agenda that's being advanced. The conservative movement is dedicated to defending whatever the president is offended by in that particular moment, and no one remembers what the last fight is because you're moving on to the next one at rapid speed. We'll be on to another offense in the next 2 or 3 weeks. It is a waste of energy. It's very frustrating.
Governor O'Malley, the president spent another weekend attacking a lawmaker of color and Elijah Cummings' West Baltimore district. West Baltimore, which is part of the United States of America, and the president did not couple it with a federal plan to help the people of that city. What do you make of it?
Well, I'd like to say I'm surprised by it, but I'm not terribly surprised. I will say this, Stephanie. Baltimore has a way of getting up for greatness, especially when we're attacked by a foreign villain. So the sort of things that President Trump said about this great American city, the birthplace of the Star-Spangled Banner, I think shocked the conscience of good people throughout our country. And it's also interesting, he has a track record of always talking about rats and infestation when he talks about places where great numbers of people of color happen to live. So it's disgusting, it's beneath the office of the presidency, and we're going to have to rise above it. Congressman Cummings, I can tell you from having been mayor, fought very hard and succeeded in helping Baltimore with additional police officers for those 10 years that we actually led the nation in reducing violent crime. And Congressman Cummings also had secured a $1 billion federal investment in a mass transit line that would have connected the poorest parts of our cities, which unfortunately was tubed by our Republican governor. So look, progress requires collaboration, and collaboration isn't something that Donald Trump is capable of.
Jason, I want to share what DNC Chair Tom Perez said last night on MSNBC.
The distraction of 2020 is going to be, again, to attempt to divide this nation along racial lines, and that's not going to work. Don't allow Donald Trump to be distracted. That doesn't mean you don't stand up for civil rights. You don't stand up when one of our own is attacked, but make sure we understand what this is about. This is about distracting the American people from the task at hand.
Jason, so what do you do with that? The president launched this attack this weekend. You and I both know, come the Sunday shows, there was a lot to cover. It could have been Jeffrey Epstein. It could have been Robert Mueller's testimony. It could have been more and more Democrats calling for the president's impeachment. It could have been about Americans who are fighting to not lose their health care, or it could have been about the GDP number being lower than expected. Yet none of those were the top story this weekend because of the president's attack. He's okay with being called a racist. There's nothing new. What do Democrats do about these massive distractions?
Well, Stephanie, I think the Democrats need to do this, and quite honestly, I think all of us in sort of this industry have to think about this. And this goes back to Baltimore. I'm a professor of politics and journalism at Morgan State University, which is in Cummings' district. He's done great things for us and helping us construct and keep the school safe. One of the things that Democrats have to understand, and they have to try and work to control this narrative, is that at the end of the day, the president of the United States is who he is. We have to move away from this idea that the president is automatically news whenever he opens his mouth. Because if he's not offering something new, there's no reason to talk to him. Look, when the president comes out with a policy, we can say, all right, look, this is what President Trump says about migration. This is what the president says about immigration. This is what the president says about Iran. That is actually news, and the Democrats can attack that from a policy perspective. But we don't have to jump every single time a cranky old man wakes up and says something racist, because he's going to do that every day. He's going to do that all the way until 2021, whether he's in office or out. So that's what I think the real challenge is. It's not to ignore him. It's to make sure that we only focus on the things that he says that matters. And Donald Trump being a racist doesn't matter anymore, because we already know that's who he is. We should talk about his policies.
Then where's the rest of the Republican Party, specifically those who are running for Congress? Chris, I want to share a bit of what we heard this weekend from one of the president's closest advisors, Mick Mulvaney, speaking on a Sunday show.
You know, though, that this is a majority black district, and when the president calls it rat-infested, he says no human being would live there. Do you understand that that is offensive to the Americans who do live there?
I understand that everything that Donald Trump says is offensive to some people.
No human being would want to live there.
When Donald Trump attacks people...
This is being perceived as racist. Do you understand why?
I understand why, but that doesn't mean that it's racist.
Okay, Chris, Mick Mulvaney is saying that doesn't mean it's racist. Yet, when the president is attacking a city, he is not going after states like Louisiana, Mississippi, New Mexico, West Virginia, that actually have the highest percentage of people living in poverty. He is not going after McAllen, La Cruces, Laredo, cities with the highest poverty rates. Those cities are not predominantly black, but Baltimore is.
Stephanie, that's exactly right. Look, we have problems in our inner cities, but they are decades long in the making that span multiple presidents and multiple Congresses. We have in rural America right now an opioid epidemic, yet we don't criticize the Republican members who represent those districts, because opioids, like inner city poverty, is a national problem that requires national solutions. It doesn't need more blaming and race baiting by this president. And if you want to cast blame on anyone, let's remember that there's a Republican governor in Maryland, and you have a HUD secretary in Ben Carson who hails from Baltimore, and over the past year has proposed raising rents for public housing by 26%. Just this past week, the Trump administration wanted to take 3 million people off food stamps. So this administration not only is not solving the problem, in many ways they are making it worse.
Noah, the president reached out to poor white America. He went to some rural areas and had rallies there and said, I am here to save you. He looks at black America, according to Michael Cohen, and looks at the poorest areas that are concentrated by African Americans, and says only the blacks would live like that. Explain to me this political strategy on the president's part. Let me help poor white America, and let me dismiss poor black America.
I'm not sure you can call it a strategy per se. It seems much more an instinct, and to the extent that it is a valuable instinct, rural America white America, which has been left, the parts of rural America that are white and have been left behind and perceive themselves not to be satisfied by government policy, particularly Washington, but also in their state capitals. They constitute a political force that Donald Trump was able to marshal and got him into office. And after 2016, everybody looked at the political strategy that he employed and said, wow, there is a demographic here that is being underserved. I don't understand why you can't do both. It is extremely crass, and the crass racial agitation that the president engages in is evident today when he is attacking a television presenter on this network who he quotes hate whites. There is no value to that, only to polarize, only to radicalize the electorate. And I don't understand why you cannot have an urban agenda that marries with a rural agenda to address poverty, to address transgenerational poverty, which is something that Paul Ryan tried to do in 2014 and was laughed out of the room for it, by the way. These are issues that Republicans are coming around to, were coming around to in the last decade, and Donald Trump is turning the clock back, and that's a real tragedy because I think Republicans are not going to be able to make up the ground that they were beginning to acquire after 2012 and 2013, 2014, the focus on poverty in urban America.
Governor O'Malley, do you want to weigh in here? I think often about what does this mean for Republicans who are running for office, because that 2018 midterm election was devastating for Republicans. And the president in 2016 was able to say, America is broken, I'm going to fix it. But now he's got a 2-year track record of not doing that. And in fact, you mentioned all the programs that have been cut.
Yeah, look, Stephanie, I would disagree with your last guess. I think this is definitely part of a strategy. I mean, let's be honest here. In a time when people are fearful about a rapidly changing economic future, Donald Trump has said to them, hey, trust me, I'm going to protect your shrinking part of the pie, and I'm going to protect it from those people who aren't like us. We're going to make America great again, by which he means the coded language, going to make America white again. This is part of the calculation. It is part of the impoverished vocabulary of a scapegoating fascist, and it is something that is going to become more intense and more regular with every passing day. The key for all of us who believe our country's greatness is its diversity and that our best days are in front of us is to tell the story of a fearless American future. There is no country better prepared to take advantage of these changing economics than we are. But we're not going to do it by turning against each other, building walls, putting children in cages, or vilifying people of color. No, we're going to do it like our parents and grandparents did. We're going to face the future. We're going to harness the winds of change and innovation. We're going to move our country to 100% renewable energy. And we're going to not only lead the world, we're going to give our children better opportunities and better lives. That's what it means to be an American. That's what the people of Baltimore defended in 1814. And that's what we're going to defend in these upcoming elections.
Wow, Governor, you had a whole lot to say right there. Chris, in response to that, what Democrats have right now is data. The president has sold fear. He has preyed upon insecurity in this country, and it worked for him. And if you actually look at the data, some of the poorest rural communities today have overwhelmingly optimistic views on their economic future, even though nothing has gotten any better. Is this an opportunity for Democrats to focus on what the president, beyond rhetoric, has actually done in the last 2 years?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, whether it is the outflow of manufacturing that hasn't been stopped by his tax cuts, whether it's the lack of business investment, whether it's his disastrous trade war that's hurting farmers, the record on the ground, in particular in Midwestern states, is not one that suggests this president has lived up to his promises. And what the irony of all this is, last week, his Department of Agriculture announced $16 billion of assistance to farmers to correct for the harm that are caused by his trade wars. Imagine if some portion of that money were put into inner cities like Baltimore to solve these deep-seated problems. I would challenge the president to go to Baltimore, to go to San Francisco, to go to these other cities that he consistently attacks and work collaboratively. He won't do that because, again, this is not about fixing problems. It's about scapegoating.
Thank you all so much. You definitely made us smarter in the last few minutes. Former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley and Chris Liu. Jason, Noah, please stick around. And you better stick around. We have a lot going on today at 1.